Hey folks, welcome to Business North Carolina One-on-One. My name is Ben Kinney, publisher, and we will be, this is the first in a series of discussions with business leaders across the state to discuss important aspects of the state's economy, along with the people that make it up, the industries, and the great companies that are here in the state. So you'll be seeing these from time to time. And obviously, one of the first things that we have going on right now is the effect of the coronavirus pandemic across the world, as well as the state. We're beginning to see signs of it opening up, but there are still many of us who, for the past 2 months, in some cases, have all been working from home. And that's why I wanted to bring in our first guest. Will Quick is an attorney, and he's a partner at the business law firm of Brooks Pierce, and he serves a wide array of practice areas, but what I wanted to talk to him about was data privacy and cybersecurity. That's how we got to know each other. We, for many years, have been doing a data privacy roundtable with Brooks Pierce, and Will has served on a few of those panels and provides some really good information. So I welcome you, Will. It's good to see you, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to be at Brooks Pierce, if you don't mind.
Well, thanks, Ben. I didn't realize I was the first of this series, so I'm even more honored to join you all as the first in what will only become a greater group of business leaders in North Carolina. But anyway, happy to be the first. I joined Brooks Pierce not quite a decade ago out of law school at Chapel Hill, but Ben, as you know, my alma mater is NC State. Ben didn't mention it, but he and I, there you go, Wolfpack. He and I are on the Alumni Association board together at NC State. So that is where my allegiance is and always will be. But joined, like I said, Brooks Pierce about a decade ago. And as you noted, have a practice that spans a couple different areas, business litigation. I do some work with municipalities, advising them on a variety of issues, and then do a fair bit of data privacy and cybersecurity work, and that has just been growing over the past couple of years. And got into that, honestly, because I was a pretty young guy and knew how to work an iPhone and a computer decently well. So when I joined the firm, they said, "Hey, you must know about this data privacy and cyber stuff." I'm like, "Well, I'll learn." And over the last 10 years or so, I've learned and really enjoyed this area, and happy to talk to you about it today.
That's great. Looking forward to it. Before we kind of get into the meat of it, let me ask you a question that I'm sure some people have questions about and such. Because every different industry has a different way of kind of remote working and how they're dealing with this kind of day-to-day thing in terms of, do you go to the office, do you not go, or are they staggering? Well, what's it like at your firm? I mean, what's it like for attorneys and stuff like that during this time?
It will vary wildly, but we're a law firm of about 100 attorneys, and we have staff. With our staff, we're approaching almost 200 people that we employ, and so we've taken I think a cautious and a rightfully cautious approach. In mid-March, our firm initially went to a staggered A/B type schedule where we had about half of our folks in the office one day and half the other. And we did that for about 2 weeks, and it was clear that things were not for us, but things nationally and in the state were not getting better. And so we went by late March to almost entirely working from home. Attorneys, staff, we have usually anywhere between 2 and 3 people in each of our offices on a daily basis. We have an office in Wilmington, one in Raleigh, and one in Greensboro to answer the main phone line, to accept FedEx packages and scan documents to attorneys or others who might need them. But for the most part, we're working from home. And I think most firms of our size, that's how they're working. I know some smaller firms and friends in smaller firms are able to social distance when they've only got 2 or 3 people at their firm anyway. More of them are probably in the office, but when we've got the size we have, we found it to be safer and more practical just to send everyone home. And it's working well for me. As you know, Ben, I've got a 4-year-old and a 10-month-old, so it's always a little bit crazy. But I've had remote hearings with the court, and state and federal court. I've had, you appear just like this, put a tie on, and everything seems to work pretty well. There's hiccups, but we're learning. And for the attorneys like me who practice in privacy and cyber areas, it was not that big of a difference. I'd done Zoom calls and WebExes before. For some of our other attorneys, they've learned and adapted and rolled with the punches.
Yeah, it's a good point. You mentioned that, and I would assume with attorneys too, it also depends on the practice area in terms of how much you can get in and out.
It does. And, obviously, if you're a litigator, for example, and you're in court all the time, well, no trials are happening right now. So your business is slowed down because trials aren't happening, but the courts are starting to do, remote hearings and remote proceedings that way. If you're a real estate lawyer, a lot of things still have to have wet signatures. And so maybe you have to go to the office once a day to meet someone. Anecdotally, one of my partners said I signed some documents in a Target parking lot, and I kind of felt like it was Calling Saul, the spinoff from Breaking, Better Call Saul, the spinoff from Breaking Bad, where I was meeting somebody in a dark corner of a parking lot to sign a document, and you put it on the back of a car and put a rock on it so it doesn't blow away, and they sign it, the notary signs it, and then. But we're adapting and figuring out ways to make it work under whatever restrictions are in place.
I hear you on that. So just to go back, we used to do it started off as cybersecurity, then we got into more of the data privacy aspect of things. These roundtables that we did, and I was lucky enough to moderate them. And I'll tell you, I'll take that back. I moderated a few, but I attended all of them. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I always remember is coming out of those things scared to death and getting ready to change passwords and all that kind of stuff, and just telling our entire staff, look, I'm scared straight. It's kind of a good thing to get an update on every year because it keeps on changing, which is amazing. But now we're in a whole new venue. So we have so many people that are still working from home on their laptops, on work-related, everything that they did at the office are doing now remotely for the most part. And that's a lot of information flowing back and forth between places, not within the walls of your office. What are you seeing in terms of businesses and how they're handling that with regards to the privacy and cybersecurity?
It's certainly a new world that we're all in right now. And, from a very practical standpoint, a lot of businesses are used to something like 10 to maybe 30% of their workforce working remotely at any given time. You've got people on vacation who take their laptops with them. You've got, somebody that has to stay at home with a sick child. But the move from basically, 10, 20% working at home to 90 to 100% working at home, it really is a big change and stresses everyone's systems. So, from a very practical standpoint, it's hard to do that if you're an IT staff to move everybody remote in a week or two. And so very early on in this, what I was encouraging clients to do was just be patient. And I think that's still true. If you've got an IT staff of a couple people, remember they're used to only supporting that small number remotely. Now they're having to put in place security measures, train, and keep updated systems that are not in the office on a daily basis. So, things like putting in place security patches, that just is a lot harder when you're working remotely. It's harder to push things out over a VPN. It takes longer. So just be patient with your IT staff. When they ask you to update something or they say we've got to update things, don't turn your computer off so that they can't get into it. You got to let your IT folks do their part. Another big challenge is there are all these new entry points. So if you've got a network and you're working from home, you're probably working off your own home wireless router. Well, your home wireless router may not have been updated in 5 or 10 years or longer. I mean, many of us seriously think about last time you probably updated or patched your home router. Those companies are putting out patches all the time, but that's a vulnerability that before your business wasn't having to deal with. The Attorney General's office put out an update on that. I want to say maybe a month ago, advising individuals to just do that, and it's a good practice to do. So there's a lot of sort of simple steps that you can take from business side, but also as a good employee, you ought to be thinking about ways to protect your business when you're working from home.
That makes total sense. And here's another aspect of it. Think about all the other stuff that's going on when you're at your home in terms of Wi-Fi and all that stuff. I mean, good night. I got 2 teenage boys, so I've got Grand Theft Auto and MLS soccer going on in 2 rooms, as well as my wife's watching Better Call Saul or something, right?
Yeah, well, and all of those points are points of entry. And so you talk about the gaming systems, for example. Those gaming systems can be hacked. And that's an entry point into your home network that then might allow someone access to a business network if you're on it at the same time and you don't have proper security protocols in place from a business side. You hear about VPN and you hear about remote desktop. Those are 2 different ways a lot of people are working from home right now. VPN is much more secure and has a lot less vulnerabilities than a remote desktop access. And if your remote desktop into your workplace and someone gets in through your son's video game to your home system, and then they get into your workplace, maybe they've got the keys to the kingdom at this point. So you want to be sure that you're updating everything in your home that allows you access to the outside.
That's great advice, man. That's really great advice. And it's something that I think a lot of folks don't know about that need to hear about.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of new entry points, and the bad guys know it. They know how to exploit them, and they will. This is we're seeing an uptick in the number of incidents that are being reported to us and that we're dealing with clients on. Some of them are the nature I just described. Some of them, the other thing I wanted to mention was just simple human nature. While you're at home and distracted, you talked about all the other stuff going on in your house. It's really easy to forget when you're sitting at your house that the email from the accounting department that looks legitimate. It's easy to not realize that it's a fake email, that it's a phishing scam, because we're all distracted in ways that we just weren't when you're at your desk. You're dialed in. You're doing one thing from 9 to 5. Now you're teaching your kids and making lunch and doing all these other things. And so it's important to really pay attention and encourage employees to pay attention to the same sorts of training that you might have given them in the office when an email comes in, not to fall prey to one of those phishing scams.
That's great advice. Very great advice. Is there anything else that you feel businesses need to know during these times?
One thing I did want to mention, sort of a final point, a lot of companies now do have cyber insurance, and it's become a trend and it's being sold. But we are starting to see that some of those cyber insurance policies and those insurers are at least claiming initially that breaches to home systems or breaches that happen from home systems are not covered. So read your policies. I know that's not a fun thing to do, but check your policy to see if it carves out, for example, computer systems as networks you own or devices that are in the office. Because we're seeing that language, and we're seeing some some insurers claim that might be a reason not to cover losses from data incidents during COVID-19.
Good advice. Great advice. Well, Will, thank you so much for kicking this Business NC one-on-one with us. It'll be the first of many, I'm sure. It's going to be some good stuff. But we couldn't have done it without a better guest. So I really appreciate it. And everybody that's watching, I'm sure, appreciates as well.
Thanks for having me, Ben. I appreciate it. And thanks for the work that Business NC is doing in this. I get the morning updates and the afternoon COVID-19 specific updates. And it's great that you all are covering it the way you are and pushing the information out. So thanks.
Man, we are staying busy, brother. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
All right, Ben.